welcome back to Recipes of Ranjini. In the baking series which I started, today we will be doing a brownie, a chocolate brownie, an eternal favorite of all ages across countries. Brownies had a different kind of a history. It originated in America, but nobody really knows how it originated. Some say that the baker had less of flour. Some say that the baker had some biscuits and some molten chocolate fell into that biscuit. Some says that the housewife had less of flour and the brownie was made. The first written recipe of brownie can be found from the book Fanny Farmer's Chicago Cookbook, in which she used the word brownie, but strangely enough she did not use cocoa powder or chocolate. What she used was molasses. A brownie which uses molasses instead of a chocolate powder is called blondie today. But Mrs. Farmer named it brownie.
The invention of culinary dishes can be complicated, and brownie is no exception. Most evidence points to chefs at Chicago's Palmer House Hotel who created the tasty treat for the World Columbian Exposition of 1893. Bertha Palmer, the wife of Palmer Hotel, was president of the Ladies' Board for Managers for Exposition. When organizers of the event asked her to create a dessert specially for the boxed lunches at the Women's Pavilion, Palmer went to her hotel's pastry chefs and gave the task of creating a dessert that was easier than a piece of a pie and smaller than a layer cake that could easily be served in boxed lunches. The result was a brownie made with double the chocolate normal brownies use, walnuts, and an apricot glaze that's still made at the hotel to this day. But the dessert was not named brownie. The first person to put a recipe for brownies in a cookbook was Fanny Farmer, who adapted her cookie recipe to be baked in a rectangular pan in the 1896 edition of the Boston Cooking School Cookbook. But that recipe contained no chocolate. Farmer had basically made what we today call a blondie. In the late 1890s, two advertisements referring to brownies appeared. The first in the 1897 Sears and Roebuck catalog advertised brownies underneath the heading Fancy Crackers, Biscuits, etc. The second, from an 1898 issue of the Kansas City Journal, advertised chocolate brownies, the first definitive reference to chocolate and brownies together. The first known recipe for chocolate brownies, called Brownie's Food, appeared in Mackia's cookbook, a Maine community-sourced cookbook, in 1899. The recipe featured chocolate, flour, milk, baking soda, all the relevant parts of a brownie. Finally, in 1906, Fanny Farmer published an updated version of her cookbook that included a blondie recipe as well as a brownie recipe, both being called brownies. After that, the recipes started spreading nationally and eventually brownies conquered the world.
So here goes our chocolate brownie. For the chocolate brownie, we need 3/4 cup of brown sugar, 3/4 cup of refined flour, some vanilla essence, about 1/4 teaspoon vanilla essence, 2 eggs, half a teaspoon of baking powder, some coffee, this is optional, and half a cup of butter and 6 tablespoons of deep cocoa powder. This is an easy way of going about with the brownies. Even your kid can bake the brownie. First, we have to use some hot water, a bit of a hot water, that is to dissolve the cocoa. You have to dissolve it well. And here I add some coffee powder. This is optional because coffee, in my feeling, coffee increases the taste of the chocolate. You may use it or you may not. So give this a good stir. The cocoa powder, the coffee, with the hot water to dissolve completely. See how luscious it is becoming. To this I will add the half a cup of molded butter. Here goes my butter, which has to be at room temperature. You use a hand whisk. If you have an electric blender, you can use. Whisk it well. The butter at room temperature, the chocolate, the coffee and the hot water. This is done for the wet ingredients. Now I go with the egg. For the brownie you need just 2 eggs. You do not need to separate the egg white and the egg yolk. And we need to give the egg a good stir. Now I add the brown sugar. Here I have 3/4 cup of brown sugar, but if you have a sweet tooth and if you want more of a sweeter brownie, you can increase the quantity to 1 cup and to even 1.5 cups. A good whisk with the egg. And then half a teaspoon of vanilla essence. Here goes my vanilla essence. And now the flour. This can be normal flour. You do not need self-raising flour, for really you do not need the brownie to rise much. Mix the flour well. You can see the mixture, it's thick. It's not runny as a sponge cake batter. To this now I add this chocolate mix. Wow, just have a look. And in goes my baking powder. For the brownie, you do not need to incorporate the air. The brownie batter, look at it, it is so decadent, so luscious. You know, there are various varieties of brownie, some like a fudgy brownie, some like a gooey brownie. I am going for a gooey brownie. People do add walnuts, almonds, but today there will be a surprise. Once the brownie is out of the oven, I am going to add a glaze. Here I put in the batter. Just see the beauty of it. Dark chocolate, creamy, luscious. I really do not know the adjectives. If you are doing a walnut brownie, at this point you coat your walnuts with some refined flour and put them over. But remember to coat your walnuts with the refined flour, or else your walnut, while you bake, your cake rises, your walnut goes down. But if you dust it with the refined flour, it doesn't go down. So here it will now go to my oven. I have preheated the oven at 180 degrees centigrade for 10 minutes and around 30 minutes at 180 degrees centigrade. But as I say always, do not go by the temperature I am saying or the time I am saying. It depends on your oven, it depends on the size of your oven, it depends on which part of the world, how cold the weather is. So you have to adjust it according to your senses. That is very easy. You go for 20 minutes at first, then you see how it happens, then you give for another 10 minutes. So here is the brownie batter ready to go into the oven. This is, I'll be doing it for 180 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes. And wait for my surprise glaze. So here it's 30 minutes and here is the gooey chocolate brownie. I leave it to cool it. Never overturn your cake when it is warm. Leave to cool it. And now for the surprise glaze. This is a coffee honey glaze which I am going to do. For the coffee honey glaze, you need about half a cup of cream, around 3 tablespoons of honey, about 1 tablespoon of instant coffee and half a cup of icing sugar. It's a very simple glaze. This cream is warmed. You do not boil it, but just maybe 1 minute in the microwave oven. Put this cream in the icing sugar. Give it a nice whisk. Here it's getting whisked. The coffee, the instant coffee. Here goes in the instant coffee. And the honey. This honey will add sweetness as well as the glaze. This has to be stirred a bit well till the coffee dissolves. I do not dissolve the coffee in hot water, but the hot cream will dissolve it, but it will take some time. Look, you can see the color changing. And around after 10 minutes, when your cake has cooled, you have overturned it, we just have to add the glaze. The coffee has dissolved in the glaze, and after a few stirs, the glaze is also thickened. And here is the brownie which has come out clean from the baking dish. What you have to do is just for the glaze to go in, make some cuts, small ones, and now goes the glaze. Since the cake is hot, it will soak up. We do not want a thick glaze. Here it goes. A rich gooey brownie with coffee honey glaze. You can serve it with the ice cream, you can serve the brownie hot, you can serve the brownie cold with a cup of coffee. Brownie is anytime delight. What I will do, I will keep it in the refrigerator for the glaze to settle in, and then maybe with an evening cup of tea, a large slice of a brownie. If you're serving a brownie with a cup of coffee, you do not need ice cream. Just cut your brownie, and you can see how luscious and how gooey it is. Have a look. Since I'm going to serve it with an ice cream, here it goes, and maybe some choco chips over the ice cream. A dessert which will only bring happiness, a gooey chocolatey brownie with ice cream and choco chips.